So if you don't mind, we can wait for 5 more minutes. Few people might join.
Absolutely, but let's use this 5 minutes, right? Because time is absolutely important. So why don't you guys start with a very short recap of what happened yesterday? I would like to really know, in terms of what did we talk about yesterday, what were your key learnings, and maybe very shortly, what are you guys looking forward to learn today?
Yes, sir. Actually, yesterday was the intro session of product management, and in that, basically, we were introduced how exactly are we supposed to go about product management. What are the actual ways of designing a product, and how you're supposed to think about the problems and
Mm-hmm.
relating uh, things. It was an interactive session, and we did enjoy.
Perfect. And who was the speaker?
Mr. Piyush Mayank,
Okay, great. So how many of you
he's a
guys
product
really
manager
got
at Google.
perfect? So how many of you guys really got inspired to get into product management after the discussion yesterday? That's great. So one of the key skill sets that I'll really look for a PM is absolute confidence and ability to speak and ability to be out there, because it's one of the things that you need to be like get yourself used to is being critical, being on the spot, right? So everybody who's raising a hand and not turning on their video, I don't think so. That's the first sign. So that's like the basic thing that I would probably expect, right? Because at the end of the day, if you are not able to like stand in front of a big crowd, whether it's engineering, whether it's design, whether it's technology, whether it's business leaders, it's hard to convey a command in the room. So probably that's the first step towards becoming a PM. Turn on your video.
Definitely agreed on that point. I mean, if you have the capability and like the leadership skills to talk and so you need to be interactive and have the strength to face people. So yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And honestly speaking, it doesn't matter how you're looking. It doesn't matter where you are. Where you are. It doesn't matter what conditions you are in. The fact that you are able to put yourself out there, put your face on your persona, that's a very important aspect. And especially, I think after COVID, the world has changed a lot. There's remote work. In fact, a little bit of what I'll also talk about today is to how to basically adapt uh, in an environment where you might need not even work with your colleagues in a physical space, right? And that's extremely important, specifically to look at as a skill set. So, by the way, what's the setup looking like? Is every student there in the campus, or you guys are still like maybe distributed across different cities? Is that everybody's joining in from campus, from their hostel rooms? How's the situation looking today?
Yes, sir. Everybody is there in campus right now. All 3 years, 4 years, fourth years have passed out, and first years haven't come yet. So,
Okay.
and regular classes are going on, club activities are going on. It's overall, and with certain restrictions due to COVID, we have to follow certain protocols. Apart from that, most of the things have opened and things are working in a fluent manner.
Okay, perfect. What I can see is that there are about 44 people have, I guess, joined the call already, right?
Yes, sir.
That's good. That's great. How many of you know about something called as the funnel or the product funnel in product management? Anybody already aware of it? Harsh says, Shikhar is aware. Okay, who's this essay? Not now the video. Sarthak Kapil, is it? Essay Shivam Agarwal. Okay, Shivam Agarwal, tell me what's What do you understand by a product
Yes,
funnel? That's good. That's great. It's don't feel like
How many of
you on
you
the
know
spot. Just
about
speak
something
what you
called as
feel
the
you already
funnel
know.
or the product
And if
funnel
it's
in
not, we'll
product
correct it.
management?
Anybody already aware of it? Shivam, you're on mute. If you have to speak, you have to turn on your audio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello. Hello, sir.
Yeah. Hi. Hey, Shivam. Hi. Just call me Rohit for the sake of this entire discussion. We're all like friends. Today's Friendship Day, so everybody is a friend to each other. So consider me as your friend as well. Address me just as Rohit. Yeah. Yeah, Shivam. Go ahead. You were telling us about something called as the product funnel. Anybody, just turn on your mic and start speaking. Anybody who wants to take a go at it.
And in product funnel, what we do is like we go for a small problem and then we expand it and go step by step expanding that problem. Like from small
Okay.
scale, we go to a big scale.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Anybody else want to take a guess?
It also includes the ARR analysis,
What does that mean?
where it's like a roadmap for your product, somewhat.
Not really. So basically, okay, funnel sabko pata hai na? So I'll try to basically do a little bit of mix of Hindi and English, but in case you guys strictly want me to keep it in English, do let me know, right? Because I understand diversity of language is important, right? So funnel, the way it works is you basically, right, you start from the most largest aspect and then you basically drill down and you basically go narrow, right? So if I were to basically create a product funnel for, let's say, an app called Mintra, the way we would look at is how many people visit the website or the app, let's say, on a daily basis. That's the top level number that it starts with, right? Number of daily active users. Then you talk about that, okay, Mintra opened. The most logical thing is that they should be, whether it's a product page, it's a t-shirt page, whether it's a category page, anything, right? So number of people who moved from, let's say, the home page or whichever page they opened up right at the beginning to the next page, right? So let's just assume 100 people opened Mintra right at the homepage level. Then the next step, how many people opened up, let's say, t-shirt page, whatever, only 40 people ended up opening it up. Like the remaining 60 people did not open anything. They just left and they did like basically close the app or close the tab of the website. So, and then after that, how many people have added something to the cart? So let's say 10 people have said that, yes, I like the product and I've added something to the cart. And then finally, people who actually made a purchase. So let's say 5 people have done a purchase, right? So 100, 40, 10, and 5. So that's a product funnel, wherein what you're doing is you're starting right from the top, and then you end up with a filtered scenario where whatever your app or whatever your product was trying to do in the first place is basically getting done. In case of Mintra, they're selling clothes or they're selling something which is in the space of accessory clothes, whatever. So the number of sales that they actually did at the end of the day is what matters to them the most. And the people who came onto the website matters them in terms of the product funnel. So for this particular product, what are we calling this? Product talks. How do you draw the funnel? Like how would product talks as a program draw the product funnel? Maybe Mohit, you can take a guess at it.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Can you just repeat the question? How would product? I could not
How
get
would
the.
so you guys are organizing product talks, right? So
Yeah,
if I
yeah,
were
yeah.
to basically ask you, okay, can you basically tell me the product funnel for maybe product talks?
So first of all, you'll begin with our target audience. That is the people who are like the entire target audience, like the big pool of people who are interested in product management. Then you'll
Yep.
select people like who are visiting our website perhaps, or like the ones who are coming to know about product matters through our various
Yes.
channels. Then the ones who are registering, and then the ones who are actually joining our Slack community, and then the ones who
Yep.
are attending and they're actively
Perfect.
pursuing. So this is
Perfect. Perfect. Very, very, very good way of putting at it. So probably yesterday about 100 people joined, and today I think we have 40 people. So we already see that drop off happening, right? So that's a very like a very good example of how products, as you move ahead, as you build ahead, you will see people leaving. And as a product manager, the first thing that you have to get used to is the fact that you will end up in a scenario wherein you will see exponential change from one level to the other, and you'll end up with a small base, uh, which is probably the most interested base in your product or service or anything, right? So yeah, perfect.
The ones we actually like create impact or like so.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. Okay, cool, Disha. So do let me know whenever
Yes.
we want to begin, and we'll start the discussion.
Yes, I think we can start now.
Perfect.
So, yes. So, hello everyone. A very good evening and a warm welcome to all of you in our interaction session on Guesstimates and Product Interview Tips. As you know, knowledge and expertise are important, but are of little use if you're unable to perform in an interview, right? No worries. We have with us Mr. Rohit Utmani, who's currently the Vice President of Product at Indus App Bazaar, #India Ka App Store. So, has pursued his BTech in Chemical Engineering from IIT Kharagpur and did his management education at London Business School. He is a leading product management innovation across domains like Indian startup space, real estate, wedding and hospitality market, and finally, building an Indian operating system, Indus OS. So, get ready to crack your interview, guys. Handing over to you, sir.
Thanks a lot, Disha, for the very quick and nice introduction. So, guys, we'll jump on. I have a very small presentation which we'll talk about, and we have, I think, the next 45 minutes with us, right? Till the time about 7 p.m. So let us define, like, before we even begin this entire discussion, let us define the objective of what are we going to discuss today. And I want you guys to be very clear, as in what is the takeaway going to be at, let's say, when we end this discussion. So what I want you guys to basically take away is understanding of the product role or the product management role in a better capacity. And second is how to basically start preparing, as well as couple of tips to prepare for to actually landing a PM job at the after you have completed your studies or while you're doing your studies, maybe an internship in this space, right? So this is the broad agenda that we'll be covering. And every slide that we're going to talk about, every topic, every conversation that we are going to talk about, you need to basically focus on what is it that we need to basically learn in order to complete our objective, right? So defining the objective is the most important thing that a PM needs to actually do in the first place whenever you're there in the organization, right? Perfect. I have a very small deck that is ready for you guys, and I'll try to make it as interactive as possible so that it's not just a monologue. Just give me a second. I'll just rejoin. There's some problem. Uh, there's a little bit of a problem, I think, in sharing my screen. Sahil, should I just email the deck to you? Can you present while I can just speak on it?
Yeah, that's fine. We figure out your permissions. You can send it to me and I'll share it.
Okay, I just sent it to you.
Hello, Rohit. Can you hear me? Yeah. Sorry for
Yeah.
the delay, guys. It'll get sorted in 2 minutes.
Yeah. Yep, I've sent you the mail. You can just project it. Somehow Teams is not allowing me to project this.
Yes,
I'll
sir.
check just a minute. And Rohit, just another thing, I think our institute network is not able to handle so many people switching on their cameras. So maybe it will be better if you switch on the camera and during the AMA we can ask the audience to switch on the cameras. Is that all right?
Network, I think that can be managed.
Yeah.
Did you guys get the deck?
Yes, sir. We're figuring out. Just a minute.
Hey Rohit, I'm pinging you on WhatsApp as well. Can you send it there?
Sure, I'll send it there.
Till then, folks, if you have any doubts, you can mention them in the chat box as well. We also share the Uber guesstimate question. So if any of you had any doubts on the approach to follow there, or were stuck at any particular point, or we also had a discussion space in Slack as well. So if you found some innovative ways or need some clarification regarding anything, you can ask those in the chat, and Rohit can take them up at the end.
Yep. I've sent the deck on WhatsApp as well. So whenever you guys are ready, we can start.
Can you guys
Yes,
confirm
sir.
whether the screen?
So is the screen visible to you?
Yeah, I can see the screen, but the deck doesn't look like the one I have created. Can you just maybe go to the next slide?
Just a minute, I'm resharing the screen. I think we are on the right presentation now.
Yeah, this looks familiar. Perfect. Let's get started.
So, Rohit, you can just give me a cue whenever you need me to change a slide, and I'll do that.
We can go into full screen mode, and I think we can start. So, guys, because we are already a little delayed, I'll quickly skip the introductory slides, right? And maybe we can jump on directly to slide number 3, right? So, you guys know a little bit about my background already. I've worked in a couple of startups since the past 9 years in my career. Companies like I started with core technology, core engineering companies like ITC and Schlumberger worked there, and then I moved on to basically taking up product roles in technology startups in India. Worked at companies like Housing.com, Weddings.in, and have been with IndusOS and App Bazaar since the past 6 years now, right? And did my engineering from IIT Kharagpur and did my master's from London Business School. So that's pretty much about me. Yeah, we can move on to the next slide. So I have a fair bit of product experience, which I've gained over the past 8-9 years in the industry. In terms of product management, there are typically two types of industries in general that you would see at. So you must have heard something called as 0 to 1, and then maybe 1 to n, right? The 0 to 1 space is typically wherein you're working in a company which is starting from probably the scratch, or which is something which is in the very early stage, right? Typically, these sort of companies have been recently found, or they're still building the product. They're figuring out what is the problem that they are really trying to solve, and then whether or not their product actually meets the solution that the market needs. Companies like, let's say, maybe IndusOS, or let's say Uber or something in their very early days, right? And then you typically have product management in companies which are, let's say, 1 to n, which means that you're working in an already very established technology company, and as a product manager, you're responsible for bringing incremental innovation, or basically taking up the entire business unit and maintaining business continuity. So let's say, for example, if you work in a company like Samsung, or maybe Google, or Meta family, for example, these are all companies wherein you will get to work on very large scale products, but at a stage wherein there is incremental innovation that is happening. So most of my career I've spent in companies which have grown from the scratch, but they have been able to attain a scale wherein they have been able to reach to millions of users. Especially with Indus App Bazaar, when I joined, we had only one OEM as a customer, but we scaled it to more than 12 different smartphone brands. We have taken it from absolutely fresh user acquisition to more than 250 million customers. And then a little bit of exposure of how to take it global is also something which we are taking out, and been able to also get involved in generating different kinds of revenue models for App Bazaar for it to be profitable. So that's how I've been able to build my overall experience. So any questions around any of these areas, feel free to ask me at the end of the Q&A session. Yeah. Next slide, please. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. Perfect. So, guys, I am sure that you must have already gotten that answer, but just let's very quickly recap of what exactly do you now understand a product manager typically does. Maybe a couple of you can just put it in the chat, or maybe one or two people can answer that, and we'll move on to the next slide. Anybody, guys? Nobody learned anything about what a PM does? How about Divya? You take a shot at it. I think it's a very shy forum that we have today.
Yes, I think so. If you would allow me, can I say something?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think a product manager is basically someone who takes care of a how a product would influence people, how it would solve their problems, and how exactly you should design and improvise whatever you want to create to solve their problem. That's what a basic role for a product manager would be.
Perfect. Okay. So let me again go back to that 0 to n and 1 to 0 to 1 and 1 to n kind of a bifurcation, because since the focus of this discussion is specifically how to land a PM job, right? Most of you might be wanting to do internships in product, or either want to pursue it as a full-time career. So it's very important for you guys to understand there are different aspects that it comes to there are different kind of roles and different kind of product management roles in different companies. Like for example, when you join a very early stage company, product managers typically are very much responsible for figuring out everything, right from marketing to customer acquisition to doing design to talking with engineers to making sure that like business stakeholders understand, to even talk to customers on a very frequent basis and trying to make something which makes sense and is trying to solve the problem that the company is trying to do so, right? So if you typically join a very early stage company, the product manager is doing a lot more, right? But let's say, for example, if you join a very tech focused company or something which is in the later stage, the amount of charter that you basically typically draw in product management is limited, but it's very much deep focused in the sense that like for example, let's say a typical product management career in Amazon will look very different from a typical product management company in, let's say, for example, a Flipkart, or maybe some a smaller company, let's say Zepto, right? Because there what you're dealing with is a very specific problem, a small part of the very large puzzle that you need to build some sort of a domain experience in, and you need to spend a lot more time in terms of figuring out what to do rather than execution, right? So here my only like kind of sort of advice would be that before you apply for any kind of a product management role in any company, don't assume that it will be the same across different organizations, across different sectors of nature. Like for example, e-commerce will be a little bit different than, let's say, for example, in AI, and a little bit different than maybe somewhere in, let's say, in the payment space, right? So a distinction between each kind of a role is going to become more and more important as you build your career and you grow your career in product management space, right? Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. Perfect. So how do you even like before you actually do that bit of a research, right? How do you know that if you are in the right space to actually be well positioned to actually be recruited as a product manager? So let's just talk about what are the things that largely most PMs, irrespective of where they work, are responsible for. So they're responsible for defining the vision of the product. What does a vision mean? It means that this is the type of problem that I'm going to solve, and this is how we are probably going to solve it and impact people, and this is what they're going to get in return, right? So it's basically drawing something which is large. You're imagining a problem, imagining a solution, and imagining how it will basically get deployed in the market and solve people's problem, and being able to lead the entire team. Let's say, for example, design, engineering, data analytics, a different group of set of people to actually develop something, deploy it in the market, and actually grow the business as a byproduct. And then finally, you're able to deliver results, right? So these are the four major areas that typically companies would be looking at as a major skill set that they would want to be there in people who are going to be joining in product roles. And if you look at these skill sets closely, right, the kind of sort of conversations that you need to bring during the interview discussions is that you need to be able to give examples of how you have been able to portray leadership skills. How strong is your business acumen in terms of whether or not you understand how typically business works, what are the different parts of a business, how does one affect the other and move it forward. You also need to be a fairly bit of good with numbers in terms of being able to imagine how, let's say, an X percentage impact here will convert into a Y percentage gain in some other area, right? So you need to be good with numbers, as well as you need to be agreeable, and you need to have a quality where you can bring the team together and develop a feeling of teamwork as well as collaboration. That fourth aspect is probably one of the most important aspects, right? Because as a PM, you are largely responsible for a team, and making sure that the team is able to work with each other. Let's say, for example, the design team will have hundreds of different things that they would want the engineering team to implement. The engineering team will again have multiple constraints that probably a business team will or a sales team will not understand. Business and sales must be hammering with concerns from customers that probably is not possible to fix very quickly. So every stakeholder or every team that you're going to be working with will have their own set of issues that you need to bring all together on one single board and let them travel from, let's say, point A to point B without killing each other in the process, right? So, for example, if you are appearing for an interview, right? Uh, and I have seen this with enough number of candidates. I've taken multiple PM interviews in my career, and where I really see the deficit in a lot of candidates is failing to tell very simple stories through which these four or five aspects of their personality comes out, right? They probably get a little bit too much invested in talking about themselves rather than talking about how their contribution has helped other people solve conflict, right? So definitely come up with stories. And in fact, like when I was in my undergraduation, I was involved in a few festival teams. I was involved in few positions where I was working with a few couple of members, but it may not always be possible for each and every person on campus to actually be working in a team-based setup, right? But what you can do is you can definitely come up with examples of, let's say, how you have worked well with your project teams. Like, for example, everybody here must have a team wherein in the laboratory or maybe in any kind of a competition or maybe any kind of a space that they have worked with a group of people. Try to draw inspirations as examples from those instances and figure out a way to create a story beforehand, before you even appear for the interview, so that you have a nice story to tell how do you come across as a team player, right? And then the first three things automatically start coming into the picture, right? Perfect. Let's move on to the next slide. Now, I think before you actually go out for any kind of a PM role, right? These are some of the very important questions that mostly you will be asked. Like most people are going to ask these questions, like, why do you even want to become a product manager, right? For example, if I am, let's say, for example, in a position where I've worked for 7 or 8 years in this position, I am less likely to be asked that question. But let's say, for example, a fresh candidate who's entering into this profession, this is a very common thing, because what we really like to know is, do you even understand what a product manager's role is? What, apart from probably the money and the command that it brings to the team, what are the genuine reasons why you want to become a product manager? So prepare this question really well, right? And there cannot be a right or a wrong answer to it. It just has to be very personal. It has to kind of sort of reflect the values that you have in your self, to be able to justify to someone that, yes, this is the right kind of person who will come on board to my team and be able to solve it. And also tailor this question for each and every different company, right? You cannot just say that I want to be, like, for example, I want to be a problem solver, right? You should start with maybe a generic story, and then as you start, you need to tailor the content in a way that you're making sure that you're not just telling why PM, but you're answering why PM in this particular company, right? You will be surprised to know that more than half of the people that I did an interview with, and obviously Indus App Bazaar is not is something which typically people don't understand what it does, right? And this is something which I've seen as a common problem with even my colleagues who are working in, like, probably brands which are more consumer centric, that candidates lack a very good understanding of that, what that product is, Like, for example, even if you interview at Zomato, a lot of candidates do not really have an answer to why do you want to become a product manager at Zomato, right? So you need to have that answer, not just the answer that why do you want to become a product manager, because that will give you a competitive edge over other candidates, and it will make the story more personalized towards why do you feel that this is the right kind of role for you, right? And also, by the way, if you guys feel that you have a question in between, raise your hand and we can answer those questions. It doesn't have to necessarily be a monologue, right? The second question that you'll always be asked at, what's your favorite product, something that you have been using, and how can you improve it, right? Everybody will have a different favorite product. My recommendation to you would be that, like, for example, if you're interviewing for, let's say, a fintech app, maybe let's say phone pay or Paytm or let's say Google Pay, while you can mention that you like this XYZ product, but also try to basically choose a app that is in their category, right? Because it will give them more edge. It will give them a better understanding of evaluating you from a perspective of whether you are interested in that business at all. And then if you are interested, do you have a mature sense of understanding of what it does? Like, for example, if I'm interviewing with Paytm, it's okay to say my favorite application is, let's say, for example, Google Maps, right? It's a fantastic product. I really like it. It helps all navigation. I can travel the world without even asking anybody directions. I can get real-time traffic updates. It's one of the best applications that I've seen in terms of user experience as well as design. It's bloody accurate, right? If it tells you 10 minutes, you're going to reach there in 10 minutes. You can't take, like, there is no way you're going to reach shorter, right? So, but you can also say that while this is one of my favorite applications, I would also like to talk about, let's say, for example, Slice or maybe Cred, which is in the payment space, which is relatable to Paytm. And then you can also make sure that the answer that you're giving is very much aligned to the core aspects of the company that you're interviewing with, right? The third question, how to manage team conflict. We have already talked about that product managers really need to be, yes, Arthur, go ahead. Sarthak, you had a question? Go ahead.
So,
Yeah.
So actually participants don't have mic access. So I think they'll be posting the questions in the
Okay,
chat.
perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So do we have a question right now? We should move ahead. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Now, the third aspect is something. The third aspect is going to be how to manage team conflict, right? This is probably my favorite question that I always ask, because irrespective of which organization that you go in, irrespective of which company that you go in, you will be responsible for managing conflict on a day-to-day basis. What it means is not that people are just fighting with each other, but priorities of different teams are different. That's the reality of life. As you will grow in this space, you will realize that while this is a high pressure role, and every tech startup or every tech company today is in a high pressure situation, even then, despite aligning as many number of possible times, different teams will have their own priorities and will have their own way of understanding a problem, right? So in this position, you really need to be able to manage conflict well, right? For example, if you are the kind of person who gets intimidated or who gets challenged in a situation where there are difficult discussions happening and you do not want to jump in and maybe resolve the conflict, or maybe kind of sort of be in a position where you have to be having uncomfortable discussions, it's something that I would say either develop that skill, or probably product management is not the right kind of profession for you, right? Because even if you get in, you will be responsible for a large number of discussions. You will be responsible for representing a large number of team members, and you need to make sure that while you're not agreeing to just everybody what they're saying, but you need to be able to make sure that teams are communicating with each other in a very, very seamless manner and the work gets done, right? And the fourth question, which is my second favorite question, is do you know how to say no, right? What does that even mean? So if you, let's say, are in a small company, maybe which is of size, let's say 20 to 100, a lot of times it will happen that the CEO of the company will be directly involved in day-to-day decision making of your product roadmap. Let's say, for example, if you are in a large company wherein you, let's say, are working with a 1,000 plus workforce, you will have situations wherein, let's say, your manager or let's say your team members are talking you about this is what needs to be done first, this is what needs to be done second. You will have to end up saying no probably more than 60 or 70 percentage times in your requests, right? Because you will be constrained with resources. There's only so much amount of work that your engineering team can deliver upon. There's only so much amount of finite resources that is available to you that your team overall can work on. And every stakeholder in the company will probably come to you that this is what I want to be done, get it done. Especially maybe, let's say, for example, if you are in a very early stage role in your career, probably it could be the CEO of the company, it could be someone senior. You need to be able to say no in a very, very polite as well as in a manner that it's explainable and it's polite, but it's something which is very stance, right? So you need to be able to answer questions like, for example, tell me a scenario where you have had to say no to a certain decision and how did you go about saying that, right? And it need not just necessarily be something that's coming from your internship experience or experience that you are looking at somewhere maybe in your team. It can be something that you had a very difficult conversation with your parent or maybe with your sibling, maybe with your relatives, maybe something which you had to plan for, let's say, for example, a road trip with your friends, right? So you need to be able to draw examples out of your personal stories where you are telling that you are comfortable saying no with a certain rationale, and you also make sure that you are explaining to these certain individual in terms of why are you saying no. Just saying a blunt no is obviously not the solution here, right? Perfect. Let's move on to the next question. Okay, now let's just talk about again the four matrix of how we typically want to evaluate candidates. So what we are looking at is that we want people in the product management space to be able to easily identify the problem that they're solving for, right? Let's say, for example, if you're a product manager at Zepto, you need to be able to tell people what is the core problem or the core need of the customers that Zepto is trying to solve today, because that's exactly where the value is coming from. If product managers are unable to exactly identify or pinpoint the problem, it's something which becomes very and very difficult for the company because they are unable to identify the right kind of problems to be solved for in the first place. So become extremely clear in terms of how you approach problem identification. Then the second part comes the solution, right? Once you have identified the problem, you need to go into deeper understanding, maybe more psychological understanding of the problem. Like, why is it happening? What are the reasons why the problem exists in the first place? Has anybody tried to solve it in the past? If yes, what are the kind of key learnings that they have seen with the constraints that comes with designing a solution? And then finally, PMs are also responsible for designing the solution. So you should be someone who typically in a group is able to solve for something, right? While there is a problem, you are always that guy who's ready with, let's say, the fire hose and is ready to kind of sort of turn out the fire. So these are some of the qualities, like bring up stories, think about scenarios where you have been able to successfully deal with providing a solution to a problem, let's say in a group, or you were the one who were able to execute the solution, if not probably have been able to come up with the solution in the first place, right? The other two things are linked together. I have seen enough number of candidates who have been very good at problem identification as well as solution design, but unfortunately had a very bad articulation when it comes to problem solving. You cannot take 15 minutes to explain the problem and explain the solution. You need to be quick. Unfortunately, everybody today has a very, very short attention span. Meetings are happening online. It's very easy to get distracted. Even in this session, I don't know if you are understanding what I'm saying, but I'm just going ahead with it. But it's very difficult to understand whether or not people have grasped the thing that you have said. So it's very, very important for you guys to be able to tell a story, to package that entire information in so small amount of sentences that it connects with the listener and they are able to understand it. It's no fault of your own. Unfortunately, that's how it is. And that's something which is also applicable in any kind of a job role, but it becomes very and very important, especially in product management, right? Because let's say, for example, if two engineering leads are talking to each other, let's say, for example, you're in an engineering role and you're explaining to your engineering manager what is the exact problem, right? Chances are that you will get maybe a 30-minute window to explain the problem, because you have that kind of luxury of time. I'm not saying engineers are in any way in less important role, but what I'm saying is that the kind of sort of equation that exists today in maybe vertical roles, you will get more and time and attention from for people who are working with, as compared to a product management space, right? Because when you're working in a product role, you're typically interacting with the CEO or maybe the CPO or CXO or maybe VP level like people who do not have a lot of time to really go through each and every scenario of your solution. They are looking for a very precise and a concise sentence through which you can explain what exactly is that you're trying to solve and how are you going to do it, right? So the art of basically articulation is extremely important. Yeah, we can move on to the next slide. Perfect. Now, this is something which I would recommend everybody to do. Let's say, for example, I'm sure that in your campus, you must be having tons of companies coming and posting either product internships or full-time product management roles. We are all short and constrained on time. So the typical process, at least it used to be in the days when I was in my campus, was to apply for each and every role and just go and interview at a role where you have been able to see a shortlist. Is it still the case? If it's so, then this slide is extremely relevant. But if things have changed, what I'm going to tell you about today, so then you guys are great. So first of all, really get to know about the company, not just the website. Don't just go and read the website. Actually read the Glassdoor reviews. Read something which the customers have written about as testimonials on social media. Read their comments on the LinkedIn page. Read their comments on the Instagram page. If they are selling on Amazon, if they're selling on an e-commerce platform, go and actually read the customer reviews which are there, right? Read about the company beyond than what is there on the website. If you have any potential seniors in your industry, go and speak to them, like have a chat with them. What is going on really internally? Like get to know about the company really well, right? That's the first basic step. The second aspect is about the actual product that the company is making. Largely, there will be either a B2C play or a B2B play. B2C is fairly straightforward. Like for example, if you want to work at Myntra, it's fairly straightforward to know what the company does, how does their app look like. Go through multiple features, not just the core feature, but actually look at deep features that are there inside the Myntra application. Look at the order section, look at how they return the orders, look at each and every aspect of how they are putting the screens one after the other, so and try to understand why and what is happening and the reason behind each and every step, right? The third aspect is the role. Generally, at your level, I think you guys will be looking at APM positions or positions which are in an entry level role. In that sort of a scenario, the product manager is essentially, again, depends on the company. If it's a fairly small company, you will be given a lot of responsibilities. If it's maybe a company like, let's say, Facebook or Flipkart, you will be put through a program, right, where you will be learning about product management in a structured process. So you need to know what is the expectation that you are going to have with the role. It's not like I will just jump in with the understanding that a product manager needs to work with engineering and design, and then I'll figure it out. The better clarity you have about the role going into the discussion, the more relevant questions you can ask, right? For example, one of the questions you can ask is how flexible do you think, how much amount of flexibility do you think will be there in making decisions in the role? Or I will be more of an executor where I'm given a roadmap and my primary responsibility will only be to execute the roadmap, right? So these are some of the questions which you need to ask at the time of the discussion with the interviewers, so that they also are getting a better clarity of the kind of sort of understanding that you have about the role and what are your aspirations, right? If you are someone who wants complete ownership of something, just wants to do things that it comes to your mind, and do not want to take too many instructions from, let's say, a large group of people, you need to join an early stage startup. If you are someone who's looking to basically looking a structured path of learning, you do not want to take too many risks in early in your career, you want a more structured and a learning approach, you want good mentors, you want people to tell you what's right, what's wrong, you're more balanced and methodological in an approach, you typically are more well suited to apply in a company which already has a good APM program, right? So you need to be really understanding the right kind of role that you are going to apply for, rather than getting a role, being in that environment, and then after that getting frustrated that no, this is not what I was looking for in the first place. And then the golden rule of product management: speak to customers. Speak to as many people as possible who are using their service or product, not just people in your network, right? Strangers who you do not know about anything, reach out to them on LinkedIn. If it's a if, let's say, for example, if it's a product like Paytm or a phone keeper, every shopkeeper today uses it. Just go to a shop, talk to that shopkeeper, understand what are the kind of sort of valuable things that they're getting. Let's say, for example, if you want to go into an insurance company, maybe go up to a bank manager and ask them what are the kinds of insurance that the bank sells. Go and talk to people in a physical setup, either on a phone call. If you have relatives in that industry, go and speak to them, understand the problems and the solutions that they are trying to right now deploy that are potentially going to solve the problem, because that will really help you develop a very mature understanding of what you guys can do and speak about in the interview, and also whether or not you would like to actually work in that role. Next slide, please.
So in the previous slide, when you told about the actual product, you said two types of things, B2C and one more thing. Could you please elaborate on that?
Absolutely. Sorry, I missed that. Yeah. So one was with the B2C aspect of it. The second aspect was the B2B aspect of it, right? So B2B are typically businesses where you are working not directly for the customer or for the end user, but you're trying to pitch your solution to, let's say, a company. For example, I recently interviewed a PM who was working in a company that helps different companies make their hiring faster and more cost efficient, right? So they have an interview panel of multiple experts who will interview candidates on behalf of the company. So the company doesn't have to invest multiple time and resources to conduct candidate interviews. So this is a typical example of a B2B company where you're trying to basically build a product that is going to be used by a business. Another example of it would be I met a company who's basically selling search solutions to e-commerce platform, right? They have a product which is a search, which basically is able to search any kind of a keyword in their catalog. They just need to integrate it in the catalog. So when it comes to a company wherein B2B is involved, getting to know exactly about the product and speaking to customers might be a little bit difficult. So you might not have an access that you're just walking to a shop and you can see, or you're downloading the app and you can use it yourself. In that case, the best way to do it is schedule a demo. Most of these companies will always have an option to schedule a demo. You become, or you pose as a potential customer You just book a demo, you will interact with, you will get a call from their salesperson. They will explain you the product, they will tell you, they will pitch you the product. So in that process, you are acting as a demo client, and whenever you're appearing in the interview, you can just tell them that yes, this is something which I did because I really was interested in seeing how the entire process works end to end. And through that process, I really learned that these are the things which you guys are doing really well. This is something which I could not understand. So either my understanding was limited because I'm probably not in this industry, or where I feel that this XYZ information, if were added, will be really helpful for people to understand, right? So these are some of the ways in which you can get to know more about the product and the company through an approach where it's a little bit twisted, but it definitely works. Perfect. Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Let's move on to the next slide. Right. So I had a mock guesstimate also, and I don't want to spend a lot of time doing guesstimates because I feel that that's fairly straightforward. There are tons of material on the internet to actually do guesstimates. But for the sake of this discussion, let's do one very quick guesstimate. And what I want to basically focus you guys on is how to draw that entire product funnel, right? So remember, all of you guys who were right there at the beginning, we drew a very quick product funnel. That product funnel is an approach of how you typically approach any kind of a guesstimate question in the world. The guesstimate question generally starts with a very generic question which you might not have any kind of a right answer to, right? You cannot guess that answer, but why the question is being asked to you is in order to see your approach through which you are going to build that product funnel, right? For consulting companies, the guesstimates may have a little bit of a different angle to evaluation. For product companies, the guesstimate is typically done in order to help understand whether or not you guys are able to draw that product funnel for each and every logical structured reasoning, right? So for example, let's just talk about the number of iPhone sales that happens in India, right? So why don't like for example, maybe one of the volunteers can help me ask this question, and I can like kind of sort of give a structured approach to how typically you should solve such a problem. Yep, there's a hand I can see. Can I have a volunteer?
So, hey Rohit, maybe I can give it a shot.
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's start. Yeah, so let's start with how would you go about determining the number of users that are there in India. Let's start with what you will take, what kind of information that you need, or how would you approach this problem?
First step would be to see like an approximate number of like how much population we have in India.
Perfect. Right.
Then I move on to maybe categorize them based on age, so that I can rule out these guys, very young children and very old people.
So let's draw step by step. So for example, you took with the population of India, right?
Yeah.
Why do you take with the population of India? Just curious. What is the reason for taking that variable?
Yeah, I feel like we need iPhone users, right? So users essentially, and that we're being India specific. So that is a subset of population. So I thought a top-down approach makes sense, and let's start with the biggest number possible.
Perfect. Correct. So if everybody here, I think this is a very simple question. So whatever you guys are like, for example, whatever variable you're taking, right? It's very intuitive that because it's the number of users that are in India, it obviously will relate to something which is right at the top, which is the population base of the country, right? And then obviously the next thing which we took into consideration is the age demographic, because population can vary from, let's say, 0 years old to 100-year old, and there is only a certain group of people within the population who are potentially going to own such a product, right? For example, if I were to say how many people eat a biscuit, that number could be much larger, right? Everybody can eat a biscuit. But let's say, for example, who's using a smartphone, it's a more narrow product which is going to be used by a specific group of age group. Yeah, let's go on. Yeah. So what do we do the next variable?
Krishnan from the audience has raised his hand. So maybe Krishnan, you can go ahead with your approach.
Yeah.
Krishnan,
Hello?
are you on the call? Yeah, we can hear you. Perfect.
Okay. I think we can categorize by gender wise because it may help which gender would buy high capacity. I think it would help.
By
Also,
gender?
tier cities, which tier 1 cities or tier 2 cities where which people would highly buying the iPhones would have.
Okay. So gender probably might not be the right thing to take in this particular example because iPhone is a very general neutral product. It's a smartphone, right? So I can understand that you might have an inclination here in your sample set, you might feel like maybe guys are more likely to buy it or girls are more likely to buy it. But if the way you need to imagine it is that Apple is not creating it particularly for a gender, right? So here you need to really understand the for example, if the question was, what can you tell me how many number of lipsticks are going to be sold in India? Lipsticks is a female targeted product. It's only targeted for a specific gender. Again, a product wherein, let's say, for example, razors, like shaving razors, that's targeted towards men in general, specifically. In that case, taking gender as a variable makes sense. Specifically for this example, it might not be the right variable to take. Does that make sense? Right. Perfect.
What about tier 1 cities, metro cities? It would help.
Absolutely. It's definitely a variable that you should consider. But see, the way you basically need to think about this entire solution is right. There are two ways to do it. One is to go very specific and very granular. The second is to basically be generic and to make a structure which makes more sense. So uh, like typically rural and urban would again be a very good variable to take here at. But I think somebody in the chat has written that there is a variable of income group, right? Which is something which is related to the pricing of the product, right? So the pricing of the product or income group is something that I would rather take rather than maybe the rural or urban, right? Because this is a very high price product that we know about and it's targeted for a very specific niche, right? So maybe let's say, for example, if we take income as a overall variable, that would probably be the right variable to take. Do you guys agree with that?
Okay. Uh, what about you think? It's how do we? I think can we use the e-commerce or social media commands and the data would help to estimate some kind of help us to think about the customer.
Perfect. So again, what you're referring to here is basically retail is basically the way in which this iPhone is sold in India. So even before you actually start solving the problem, right, you need to go and understand what is the question. The question is how many iPhone users are there in India. It's not about how many number of iPhone sales are happening today.
Okay.
iPhone sales is different than iPhone users, correct?
Okay.
So let me just simplify this. A very simple approach would be that, okay, there are about 1.4 billion people in India. Assuming that only children are not going to buy this product, and extremely old people, let's say for example senior citizens who do not generally have a smartphone any which ways, are not likely to buy a product. So that leaves it, and that approximately is around 40% of the total population of India. So you would be roughly left with about 800 million users, right? 800 million users is the users who basically out population are left if we remove children as well as extremely old adults. Then what we are going to also remove is people who absolutely cannot afford this, right? For example, people who are in the extreme lower end of the income category, like who cannot even afford, like for example, a livelihood, are not something which are going to buy this device at all. Right? So you can, so typically bottom 15 to 20% falls in the extreme poor category in India. So you can remove another 20% from the total 80 million number, which leaves you between somewhere around 650 to 700 million users overall in general, right? Now, there is, correct. Now, there is again an aspect of having business acumen, which I told you in the first place, right? Uh, a general business acumen thing, because I am there in the smartphone industry, I know that there are certain market shares numbers which are available, right? So in this case, you should ask the person who's basically conducting the interview that can you give me a sense of what is the market share of users of iPhone in India, and probably that number would be around 5 to 6%, and that can give you a number which basically is about 20 to 30 million users, which are total number of iPhone users in India. Yeah. So that's how we have been able to and narrow it down without taking too many variables of retail sales, etc., which are too more complicated to get at this basic level stage, right?
Okay.
For example, if someone to ask you how many number of Parle-G biscuits are sold in the city of Mumbai, then you would probably be looking at in Mumbai, what are the number of like biscuits sold in general, what is the population of Mumbai, how many people are there in one household, all of those variables come into the picture, right?
So instead of we put the product at top level and based on that we filter it. Instead of randomly putting something, we have put the product on top of the pyramid and from that we have filtered, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So one very good thing, I will after our session, I will send a few links to very good guesstimate questions which are typically asked in product management questions to Sahil and the team. They can share it with you guys. You will have a very good repository to solve them. And what I would want you to do is you take a problem instead of directly reading the solution, actually like try to understand it, maybe come up with your own solution and see whether or not that solution matches with the solution which is there on the portal. Okay. Perfect. Let's move on to the next slide. Again, this entire purpose of the guesstimate is to basically to understand whether or not a candidate has clarity of thoughts, is able to identify the right kind of variables, is able to put a right structure, which is basically right from the top to the bottom. You start from the top, then you go to the bottom most, then you come back again at the top. These kinds of like moving up and down the ladder is something which is confusing and which shows that you do not have a good clarity of thought, right? So this is something that you need to get better at. And what I would typically suggest is you guys get in a group of 2 or 3 people after, let's say, for example, this session, divide amongst yourself and get into the habit of becoming an interviewer and becoming an interviewee, asking each other these questions and like doing these mock discussions between yourselves, because that's the best way to actually get good at it. Individually doing it will always have that element of whether or not you are doing it on your own. You will always be very comfortable, but when let's say you're put in a spot, even if in front of your friend, your brain will automatically try and come up with these aspects and you will get much better at it. And I am 100% sure that a lot of people might feel shy, might feel a little risky to go out there and put out there in the put out themselves out there in front of a friend and be embarrassed that they don't know the right way to do it. But it's better than failing at it in the actual interview rather than failing it in front of your friend, right? So that's my recommendation to all of you guys. Fail as many times in front of your friends, family, colleagues, seniors, juniors, better than failing at in the interview. Okay. Let's move on to the next slide.
Group work is better than machine, right?
Yeah. Perfect. And then finally, really like do these things. Let's say, for example, if you are interviewing, let's say with Rohit from IndusOS, go send them a LinkedIn profile, LinkedIn request. Actually, if their profile is open, you actually see the kind of things that they have posted. If they have not posted anything, maybe see posts for PMs who are in their same company. People have started using LinkedIn as a fantastic tool to network. Go reach out to these people, understand what they're talking about, understand what their interests are, tailor your questions that you're going to ask the interview beforehand. Like for example, every interviewer at the end of the interview will basically give you 5 to 10 minutes to ask questions. Don't let that go out to waste, because the first 40-50 minutes the interviewer is just asking you questions and making up your mind based on what he has asked. But in that last 10 to 15 minutes, you have the opportunity to really make a mark. Every discussion or every success that I have had in my career, because I've pitched to extremely senior level guys at Samsung, people who have been much older than me, people who have been in a very, very different aspect. Every success I've had is basically asking them intelligent questions, not answering what they have asked me. Because if they have a very difficult question for me, I may or may not be able to always answer. But if I have a very, very relevant and important question to ask to them, it shows that I have an understanding, a very mature understanding of what their business is about, why are they doing what they're doing, and why are they discussing with me the things that they're discussing, right? And that's a very, very important aspect. A lot of candidates feel shy in asking questions. They feel that their questions will be not taken with a serious attempt. But prepare questions for each and every interview. Let's say, for example, you're interviewing with, let's say, Morgan Stanley. You need to have 3 questions that you're going to ask that particular guy, and one of the questions has to really biggest achievement in the past 6 months, and how have you been able to go through it. It's a very generic question. Every person will have something or the other to tell. It gives a personal sense of relatability to that interviewer, and it makes you stand out as someone who's curious in learning more about that person. Another question that you should always ask is, especially this is relevant for product teams. Let's say, for example, if you're interviewing a senior leader in the product team, what was the biggest problem that your customers was facing in the past 6 months, and how did you guys come up with a solution to solve that? How was that solution designed and implemented in the market? And this is a feature we have already implemented in the, and how that has been successful, right? It's a very generic question again, but it works every time, because you are asking them exactly the pain point of the customer. You're actually asking them how did they solve it, you're asking them how did they deploy it, and you're asking them how did they measure the progress, right? All the 4 aspects are very critical to be answered, right? Perfect. Let's move on to the next slide. And we are open to question and answers. I think we have taken a lot of time for the slides to cover. So I'm more than happy to answer questions now.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. That was truly inspiring. We are very lucky to get a chance to interact with you. I'm sure the students must have got some very important insights about guesstimates, and are now better equipped to crack their interviews. Also, yeah, we can go to the questions now.
Yep. So how do you guys do the Q&A? You like everybody asks, or we need to go it from the chat?
So the questions are posted on the chat, and we can answer them back.
Perfect. So can you just filter the questions that we have already not covered and you would want me to cover first?
Yes, sir, we can do that.
Yeah, go ahead. Laksh says he has this Microsoft PM intern interview experience tomorrow. Any last minute tips to prepare? I think the last 45 minutes were a lot of tips, Laksh. So I think connect with the recruiter. If you know already who's going to interview it, send them a LinkedIn profile, go through their LinkedIn, go through some of the latest press release that Microsoft has done. If you know which product team that you're going to work on, specifically read more about their product. You can even come up with some sort of a mock of a solution that you feel will be necessary if you feel that's something that you need to be prepared with. Context. I recently took up a full-time APM offer with a B2B SaaS after 6 rounds of interviews, and these were questions asked. Interestingly, I did mention Google Maps as my favorite product in one of the tech rounds with the CTO. Question: I struggled with the salary negotiation in the 6th round and did not use appropriate data points. It would be beneficial if you could discuss this topic sometime off for campus placement and not different. Yeah, negotiation of salary usually, I'm not sure if it's really like kind of sort of even allowed at your structured placements. If it is, uh, there is no reference that you can give, right? As a fresher, you can't really say, yeah, I was earning this XYZ or my peers are doing this. Salary negotiation discussions usually come later on when you're like moving ahead in your career. But the very obvious thing to do is that, let's say, for example, if you are interviewing with a certain company in a certain role, you should know what is the average pay range for that particular role. And you need to say that, okay, irrespective of what I am earning, I know that this particular role in this market is paying this XYZ salary. So is it possible for you guys to maybe relook at it again? If you have multiple offers, you can obviously negotiate using that. I generally don't recommend that because, like for example, if candidates come to me and say, yeah, this XYZ group is paying me that much, you should also pay me that much. I personally don't like that, but again, this is something which candidates do, so it does work also, but that's not going to be my recommendation.
Rohit, just a bit of follow up on this.
Yeah.
Thanks for mentioning. I'm also aware of such practices, but if not this, then what else is the way to renegotiate? What are the
No,
approaches that one can
negotiation
take?
if you really feel you're getting underpaid, right? I don't think so that at this stage in your career, you guys need to worry about money. Because see, if you really like the company, if you really like the opportunity, if you like the people that you're going to be working with, I am not saying go and join a role which pays less. Join a role which pays market rate, but don't unnecessarily try to inflate the expectations, because in this early stage, right, if you are joining new as a fresher, a lot of time will be spent by team members mentoring you, making you understand the basics, giving you a lot of things to manage, but team members will expect a lot then from you. Like for example, if I get you at a very premium rate, right, my expectation would be that you kind of sort of deliver that premium value for me as well. I haven't seen a lot of APMs being able to do that because they are still in the learning phase and there's nothing wrong with you. If you feel that a startup, a very early stage startup, is right now not in a position to pay you as much, then do ask them ESOPs, right? Tell them that I want, okay, if you can't pay me cash, I would rather want you to at least match it up to ESOPs, because that's something which is doable, right? Uh, is that something which answers your question?
Yeah, for the first few months, though, my priority would be learning only. But let's say, at what stage do I know okay, this is when I need to ask for more, or this is when I've delivered certain impact. So how do I keep a track of my own progress as well?
Yeah, you'll know that. I'm very sure. Like for example, you will work on something, you will deliver something, it will deliver exceptional results. Like for example, I cannot disclose that, but I have grown multifold in my organization in terms of like the pay scale, right? Multiple X jump. It's not just a percentage jump, it's a X percentage jump. I can't disclose this, but
Yeah.
your organization will reward you for the hard work. All you need to be focused, especially at this early stage, is just to get to learn to build awesome products and release them out in the market and at market rate. Don't kind of sort of accept something which is lower than the market rate, but honestly, charging a premium or expecting a premium might also not be the right thing to do.
Got it. Also,
So a
other
few
impact,
people have.
uh, just the last question, Rohit, if you don't mind. Uh,
Yeah, I'm here for yeah. Please go ahead.
Yeah,
One
make it very
question.
quick. So, the impact I generate at a current company, right? So, the numbers would be internal. If I want to communicate it externally, maybe if I'm looking for a different opportunity, some other industry that appeals to me. So, how do I put it on a resume? Like, what is that the only way to show the impact, or are there any other ways to communicate that as well as a product manager?
No, so see, a lot of numbers can be disclosed in general in the PR in the company. So whichever company you're working with, make sure that the founders as well as your managers are comfortable like exposing those numbers out in the market. You cannot just go and talk about every internal metric, because even that's not right. And switching too many roles, I would say, is not the right thing. At least spend a couple of years initially, maybe 1 or 2 years, like learning and building something concrete, and then move on. And when you're moving on, obviously your resume will have to speak about some sensitive numbers, but just make sure that if you're talking about something which is on the compliance side of things, right? For example, in payments, everything is compliant. You need to be very, very regulated. In a typical other industry, it might not be that much. So you need to basically find the right balance. And as you enter into the organization, you will yourself know what is okay and what is not okay to be talked about publicly. Yep.
Yeah. Thanks.
Perfect. Okay.
So a few participants have raised their hands. So like they're allowed to unmute themselves. They can unmute and
moderate, and I'll answer.
Yeah. Hello.
Hey Shivam, hi.
Yeah. Hi. So, Rohit, the thing is, like, right now I am working as a product application engineer in KLA Tancor. Okay. So this company is a basically B2B company, and I just want to switch into product management, right? So I'm not very sure how should I go ahead.
You are in which role exactly?
So basically, I'm a product application engineer. So our company actually builds inspection tools, which actually inspect
you're a developer right now, right?
Sorry?
So you're an app dev. So you're in a development role, right?
No, I'm an application engineer. So the thing I'm telling you about my role. So actually, what happens is our customer is like TSMC and Intel. Such companies are our customers. So what we actually do, we build the tools who can actually inspect the wafer. Wafer means the chip that Intel is and these companies are making. So we actually inspect those chips yeah, so my work there is like I go to the customer site, I test their chip with our tools, and so upon depending upon that, our product is being sold by the sales team. That is not my part, but I'm the person who actually go to the customer and talk to them, and that's what I do.
Perfect. So see, the question of how to break into product management is fairly straightforward. Whatever we have talked about is how a typical product profile looks like.
Actually, I want to move into product management of the same company. So because I love the work culture here. And
like for example, I think whoever your manager is, right? You go and talk to them. Be very candid that okay, whatever I'm doing today is great, but my 5-year aspiration is to basically become a product leader, right? And the next kind of promotion or the next kind of opportunity that I want as a next career path is in a product role. And if you guys have an internal like a portal or something of that sort where they advertise for jobs, just tell them this is the role I'm interested in, and have a very candid conversation with them that this is how you want to build your career. And if they feel that no, you are not ready for it today, maybe the next 2 to 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and if you're comfortable on that, figure out that. If you feel that this company is not going to give you that product role even in the next 5 to 10 years, then switch. Move on to a company who will probably be open to hiring you as a PM. But being very open about your plans with your managers is a very, very important thing. A lot of people are very shy. They are not comfortable putting out their plan very clearly to different people in the company. Don't just go and talk about it to any random person in the company, specifically your whoever your line manager is.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And in case the line manager doesn't give you a clear idea, maybe the HR of the team.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think because of constraint of time, we would take, I think, 2 more questions. That should be.
Sure. I am available in case anybody wants to still ask questions. But yeah, you guys, I understand, have a tight schedule. So please, let's go ahead.
So someone in the guest was. Okay. You may go ahead.
Can I ask my doubt?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, you may go ahead.
Okay. Hello Rohit, currently I am a sophomore at IIT BHU, and my doubt is that currently I'm aspiring a role in product. So how can I go about it? Like, what things can I do, and what should be my roadmap about it?
Okay, so basically, see, I think this must be a question that might be relevant for a lot of you. Ki how to even apply for a product management position, how to become or how to enter into this space at all. So yeah, देखो, there are two ways to do it, frankly, because you guys are still in your campus. A lot of companies will come to your campus to advertise for APM roles or junior PM roles, right? That's obviously one way to do it. You go ahead and apply. You build your resume in a way that it fits the kind of sort of things that I just told you. A product management profile looks like, right? So when you're building your resume, you write, "Yeah, I'm an aspiring product manager." Like for example, on your LinkedIn, don't write I'm an IIT BHU fourth year student, right? Aspiring product manager, IIT BHU student. So that every person who's coming to your LinkedIn knows that you want to become a product manager, right? Recruiters do look for people on LinkedIn. I will look for people on LinkedIn. You also need to kind of sort of follow the right product leaders in the companies that you want to work at. Like for example, if you want to work at Spotify, you want to work at Zomato, if you want to work at Indus, for example, that matter, you need to follow every person on LinkedIn and keep an eye for whether or not these companies are advertising for product management positions. Just a second, guys. 1 second. Yeah, so you need to keep an eye on whether or not the companies are hiring. If they are hiring, then you need to reach out to them, understand how you guys can apply. You typically would want to network with people on LinkedIn that, okay, this is my profile, this is something which I really want to do. Create a resume which has all the kind of qualities that you feel needs to be reflected, which are relevant for a product management profile. Like these are the basics that you need to do. The second aspect is if nobody is giving you a product role, get into a role which leads to product management. For example, a data analyst role, a role which is there in the engineering team. Like work with the product people, maybe in user experience and design. Work within that space of product engineering, marketing, and eventually like learn and network and grow. See the kind of sort of environment that you are exposed to in the building of the product, and maybe in another 1 year, 6 month, or 1 year timeline, move towards that goal. But what you really need to do is make sure that you are advertising yourself as someone who wants to get a product management role, right? Your LinkedIn should today change to aspiring product manager if you are really serious about it.
Thanks a lot, sir. That clearly answers my question.
Perfect. Yeah, Laksh, go ahead.
Okay.
Was that yes, I have my interview tomorrow for the Microsoft PM intern thing, and it's an on-campus thing. So like the company is coming on campus, and we have a round. They told like they didn't detail much, but they told we have a case study discussion round. So like, what can I expect in that round? Like, is it a product design thing, like design an elevator or design a fridge kind of thing, or will it be something different?
Very good question. So see, I've never interviewed Microsoft, so I don't know what they're going to ask. But see, there are three major areas that, like case studies in product management, generally they work is they give you a scenario, okay, and they're looking for three kind of qualities. Do you have a product sense? Do you have an analytic sense? And can you basically articulate things well? Okay. For example, let me give you a case study and tell you कि यार, let's say for example, I am Netflix, okay, and let's say I'm the VP of product at Netflix, and you are, let's say, a PM at Netflix. I come and tell you कि यार, I have recently seen that the sports, the consumption of sports and documentary has suddenly dipped in the past 1 week. Tell me why has it dipped? Like find out why has it dipped. So it's a very obvious question, right? Netflix, agar aap dekhte ho, if you have seen Netflix or if you have used Netflix, you must have seen that there's a too much amount of content, right? They have multiple content libraries. What they are seeing is there's one particular library which has suddenly seen a short, or where the number of people who are watching that particular library suddenly dropped. They would want to know what's happening and why is that happening. Now, how do you go about answering this question? So first of all, you need to understand that this is what Netflix does. This is what their core metrics are. Like for example, figure out what is the single core metric that Netflix is basically looking at. Then you basically say that, okay, Netflix, let's say they want to know how many people are watching. Then they want to know how many people are actually, like for example, ask them a question, has our daily active users reduced? They say no, the daily active users have actually grown. Okay, so if more number of people are watching Netflix, then obviously something might be wrong with specifically the sports category. Then you ask, yeah, can I have a data consumption pattern for all the categories that are there on Netflix? Like I know that sports and documentaries has gone down, but can I see for what has happened for the others, right? Then you will see that, okay, there is a shift of pattern which I'm seeing, that maybe let's say a new movie, Gangubai released, and people are watching that more, and sports and documentaries is kind of sort of getting a decline. Then you will also ask a question that has anything specifically changed in the sports and documentary category. Like for example, every time you add a new content, right, you will see more and more people watching that particular content library. It's not like yaar ek baar add kar diya chalta rahega, right? So you can ask yaar whether any new particular content has been added in this particular genre in the past 1 or 7 days. Maybe that has really been bad. It has been so bad that people have stopped watching it, or it has been so hit that more number of people have stopped watching it, right? So what you're doing is you're asking questions which are relevant to that product. You understand what that product is, and then you're asking questions in a way that it's giving a very clear understanding to me that you know what Netflix product does, and you know what their product, what changes that they bring in their product with customers eventually interact with and happens as a real market force, right? You can also ask about a question that there was some sort of a news that Netflix will now start charging for different TV subscriptions, right? Has that resulted into less number of DAUs, right? Like Netflix ban ho gaya, आधे लोग के 20% people can't even watch Netflix, so that will definitely result into some sort of a negative like movement in across categories, right? So this is a typical case that you will be given at. Another case could again, yeah.
Even I was keeping that in mind when I was preparing that, okay, we'll ask clarifying questions on whatever they tell us the case is and then go forward. But then the latest update we got was that we'll be briefed together about the case study and then we'll have to write a Word doc on it for like 30 minutes. And then we'll have some 5-10 minutes of discussion on it, like individually. So then I was concerned on the point that I think then there'll not be the one-on-one discussion kind of thing where I can go on asking clarifying questions and then making sure that the assumption I'm making or the way I'm approaching is like proper. So then I was like a bit worried on what to do in that case.
See, the first thing that you really need to become very good at if you want to be in product management, become hell confident, right? Become so confident, and I'm not saying become overconfident. Do not judge your skill sets based on changing environment. Like for example, today something is happening, tomorrow something else will happen. My company will not recruit me if they see that I cannot adapt to changing external environments very, very quickly, right? So you obviously are right now in a vulnerable situation where you are asking things very openly, right? And this is a safe environment when you can do that. But where I'm trying to basically take you to is be in your own mind very open to a situation where, okay, I will have these XYZ variables in front of me, right? And within these XYZ variables, each and every individual who will be there in the room will be exposed to the same amount of variables, right? Like the other person who will be also competing with you doesn't have a competitive edge against you, because that's equally uncharted territory for anybody, right? Where you probably might need to worry is, let's say, if you are competing with someone who's already Microsoft PM, right? So the way you need to project and like take this entire approach is that you need to first be sure that irrespective of the nature of the question or the case, you will be able to crack it, because believing in yourself is the first thing that you need to do if you want to become a PM. Because every day, I'm not kidding you, every engineer, every designer, every data analyst, every business salesperson will think that you don't know what you're doing if you're in a PM role. And people will come and question you. People will come and ask you things which might even outsmart you because you are not the domain expert, right? An engineer will always know code better than you. A business or a salesperson will always know how to sell better than you. A designer will always know how to design product better than you. You do not excel in any of them in a capacity of skill or a hard skill. But what you excel or what you're better at, and the reason you are being in a PM position is because you have more confidence in solving a problem. You're more confident than the rest of the team members in being able to bring everybody together to reach a common solution. Did that help?
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Yes, sir.
tomorrow, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so very much, sir. I'm sure everybody is more confident now. It was a pleasure to have you with us, and we wish you all the very best for your future. Please keep inspiring us the way you have done. And one more thing I would like to add on a personal note is the way you say perfect is definitely very motivating for everybody who's listening. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, that's great. And I am really sorry I couldn't answer all the questions. So what you guys can do is maybe we can, in case some people are really interested, you guys can like compile all the questions together, and we can maybe do one more short Q&A later on if that's something which to do. Okay.
Yes, I will look into it.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.